Greetings, fellow infidels. I'm finally getting around to doing the response video that I said I was going to do. I've had to think long and hard about how I wanted to do this video, because, as was pointed out to me after the last one, I had said that I was going to be unplugging Matthew 4:19, Bible-thumping wingnut, and that group of theists in general. Now, I had promised to do a response prior to finding out that the person who originally made that video was a part of that group. Matthew 4:19 was on that video, but I was not aware of the association between them. My unplugging was mostly in regard to the presuppositional argument and the people that use it. If they want to discuss things with me that don't rely on the presuppositional argument to make a case, then by all means, ask away, discuss. That's fine. But the presuppositional argument is just genuinely dishonest, and I have no interest in discussing that particular argument any further. So, what I'm going to do, since I had said that I had taken 7 pages worth of notes, instead of responding to the entire video all in one go, what I'm going to do is take the bits that I think are, the most important ones, the meat of their arguments, and a couple of things that I think are just genuinely interesting to go over and point out. The first one that I'm going to do is when my channel's name came into question. And I'm going to play the clip for you in question right here.
But I did want to make mention of his name at the top, Our Godless World. It's rather interesting, I think. I think atheists who say that there is no God are intellectually dishonest and absurd, because it's impossible to rationally come to that universal negative conclusion. And then there are those atheists, who won't say that there's no God, but just that they do not personally believe that a deity exists. And even those guys, which comprise probably a majority of the modern atheists, I think, that exist nowadays, I still are probably a little bit dishonest in my estimation. I mean, to look at the universe in all its glory and wonder of sentience and existence itself, especially with how super limited our understanding of the world is, and how limited our abilities are in a variety of other ways, in areas. I don't know. I just think the only legit skeptical position is that of pure agnosticism. The kind of sort of I don't know one way or the other sort of thing.
All right. So, first of all, reading a little too much into my name. I just picked it. A little bit of thought went into it, absolutely. But you are not drawing the proper conclusion from it. Our Godless World. What does that mean? Well, certainly it does mean that I do not believe in the existence of a God. That's the most obvious one right there. So, you're right. I don't believe in a God. I believe the world is godless. So, that's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is the fact that when you see a child that is, an orphan or only has one parent, what do you call them? Yes, orphan. But if they've only got one parent, they are motherless. They are fatherless. Now, if God does exist, we can still say this world is godless, because that child absolutely does have a father in the technical sense. There was a father involved at some point. But that father is absent, does not play a part in the child's life. So it is with our world. Our world acts as though there is no God. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. There's no rhyme or reason to it. The most devout people can pray all they like, and a man can still bust into that church and gun them down. So this world acts as though there's no God guiding it. I know that you would argue that nothing happens without God's guidance, and I'm going to get to that later, because you say that several times in your video response. But that's neither here nor there. That's a different video altogether. Still, this world behaves in such a way that it seems like even if there is a God, he is not present, much like that child has an absentee father or an absentee mother. And finally, I chose our godless world, because this is our world. This is the only one we have. So, regardless of whether or not God exists, regardless of whether or not God plays a part in our daily lives, this is still our world. We only have the one. And I firmly believe that the actions of the devoutly religious, regardless of what sect they belong to, whether they're Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, doesn't matter. I believe that the actions of these groups, on the whole, are detrimental to our world. And I think we need to remind ourselves from time to time that this is our world. It doesn't belong to anybody else. We're the only people that can care for it. And when we relinquish that obligation of ours to a being that, even if he does exist, doesn't act like it, when we relinquish that responsibility, we doom ourselves to destruction. So that's why I called my channel Our Godless World. Now, briefly touching upon the final statements in that comment, learn the definitions of agnosticism and atheism. Agnosticism is, I do not know. Atheism is, I do not believe. Whether or not you know something, you can have a belief about it. So, I, for example, am agnostic about whether or not there is a God. As are you, I would argue. You claim to absolutely know that not only does a God exist, but it's your God, the God of the Bible. You claim to have that knowledge. You do not possess the ability to demonstrate that claim. Therefore, you do not have that knowledge. Everyone on earth is an agnostic in a technical sense, since no one can have absolute knowledge as to whether or not a God exists. I am atheist because I doubt that a God exists. I can be swayed. I can be convinced that I am wrong if a preponderance of evidence is shown to me. However, as I have stated in a previous video, science in its basest form is process of elimination. So, while I don't know whether or not a God exists, I know it's not your God, because the claims made about your God have already been counted out. So anyway, that is part 1 of I have no idea how many, in response to some of the questions that were raised in that response video to mine. Till next time, keep thinking critically.